Welcome to Pod Save America. I'm Jon Favreau.
I'm Jon Lovett.
I'm Tommy Vietor.
1 year and 4 months later, we are back in the studio, and I have never been happier to see all of your smiling faces.
You
Look
guys
at
look
this.
good.
Look at
You
this.
haven't aged a day.
What a thing. What
We're
a
back.
thing, huh?
It's weird.
Here with my boys.
It does feel it feels nice, but it's very strange. I'm used to talking to you through a computer.
Yeah, recording a podcast is a private thing. It's something I do alone.
Not anymore, John. On today's show, Donald Trump inches closer to a second run for the presidency. Geez, it's like we never left. A year later, we're still... All right, let's get to the news. Donald Trump unsurprisingly dominated this year's Conservative Political Action Committee, or CPAC, that was held in Dallas, Texas over the weekend. He got the prime speaking slot. He crushed the straw poll of attendees, and every other speaker basically parroted all of Trump's lies and grievances.
Did you hear him crying about his time slot?
It
It was a
No.
solid 2.5 minutes of his speech whining about getting Sunday. How Matt Schlapp, he said, "Give me your worst times." We actually did. Blah blah blah. It was a whole shtick.
He was angry.
Oh, I totally missed that part.
He was angry that he didn't get Friday night or Saturday night. I mean, he really is just a touring.
I thought that was the prime slot.
insult
I thought that was the
comic.
prime slot. Sunday afternoon.
I
prime
know.
time. All right,
I know.
anyway.
He was annoying. He was pissed he couldn't golf.
So we will have a lot more on the former president in a bit, but I do want to start with some other notable CPAC moments, like a painting of Trump hugging and kissing the flag that went for $25,000. The founder of the insurrectionist militia known as the Oath Keepers was seen enjoying a beer. And here's how the audience reacted when they heard that the federal government didn't meet its vaccination goal by July 4th.
They were hoping, the government was hoping, that they could sort of sucker 90% of the population into getting vaccinated, and it isn't happening, right? There's younger people.
Lovett, do you get the sense that a lot of Republican politicians and especially Republican media figures are more openly anti-vax lately? Like, why do you think they're going down this path? Frank Luntz told Andy Slavitt on his pod today that Trump is sending out fundraising mailers claiming that people are dying from the vaccines.
Yeah, I mean, they are. I think a couple things are happening. One, this is an extension of COVID is overblown. So implicit in a lot of this is, if you're older, if you're in a risk category, you should get vaccinated. But no one else needs to get vaccinated because they're lying about how it's still, they don't recognize how it can still hurt younger people. And they don't recognize mutual obligation, I guess, even if you accept that premise. Like, well, why wouldn't you get this vaccinated? It's harmless, obviously, and will protect the older people who are more vulnerable. The other piece of it is that we've sort of hit the kind of threshold where we've moved from scarcity in this country to now it is time to go to like local persuasion. Now it is time to go to like trusted people in communities to get that last group of people vaccinated. So then that gives them an opportunity. They can prevent Biden from succeeding. That's a goal. They can feed conspiratorial mindsets. That's a goal. They can keep the attention of like their broken viewers who are easily pulled by OAN and Newsmax, which are more conspiratorial. And then when you talk about things like needing to go inside of communities, they can kind of fan the flames that this is some door-to-door effort to kind of force people to get the vaccine. And because Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham don't care if people live or die and are completely valueless, it's an opportunity for them to sow chaos, and the Republicans just follow them along.
Permission to float a conspiracy theory?
Yes.
Sure. Permission granted.
Absolutely. That's
Thank
what we
you.
do here.
Do you see Madison Cawthorn said that the reason they were going door to door for vaccinations was to prepare to eventually take away your gun and your Bible?
I did not see that.
This was,
I knew that I saw something that stupid that Madison Cawthorn said was trending, but I did not. I did not look into it.
It was a good one.
Thank you.
It was a good one.
Well, no, but like the governor of
Well, no,
Missouri-
let me.
Go ahead.
I have a way worse conspiracy theory
Okay.
for you, John. So, right, part of what Love was saying is like Fauci is the new boogeyman, right? Because Biden's boring. Here's the other thing I want to. Here's my conspiracy theory for you. So, Kristi Noem made this oblique attack on Republican governors who say they didn't lock down, but they really locked down. So she's sort of viewed as an oblique shot at Ron DeSantis. Do you think she's doing this as a stalking horse for the Trump family, who's now worried about DeSantis?
Wow, you're deep in all of these.
I read
did
about
not-
CPAC all weekend.
I missed the Kristi Noem thing though. That's fucking.
Yes,
Yeah, it was good.
it was like the Kristi Noem thing. It's so many levels of bullshit deep. It's like, hey, you may get the impression that some of these Republican governors did the wrong thing. Don't let them lie to you about how wrong they were.
That's exactly right.
Some of them were right, and we should hold them accountable.
That's right.
That's the Noem position. Like, I made sure that my state was leading the country in per capita deaths. Can Ron DeSantis say that? No, he cannot.
He cannot.
I kind of think the anti-vax sort of trend now in the Republican Party, now that it's becoming more mainstream in the Republican Party, really does fit with the larger story they're trying to tell, which is you can't trust the radical left, and the radical left has now taken over all of our institutions, and now they're in power, and they're going to constantly make you do shit that you don't want to do. They're going to force things in your life. And if they give you a vaccine, you can't trust that vaccine from the radical left, just like you can't trust them teaching things in schools, and you can't trust them that they're gonna try to take away your free speech, right? Like, it is all of a sort of, it's all of a piece here.
That's the overwhelming theme. The liberals are going to take stuff from you, and the far right wing of the Republican Party, we are the only ones who can stop them. Guns, freedom of speech, your Facebook feed, COVID restrictions, funding for cops, the border, and then eventually it got to Trump, who was like, and they took the result of the election from me.
Right.
There was somebody wandering. Washington Post found somebody wandering around CPAC, which is, look, if any big political gathering has this sort of person, backpack covered in buttons, a lot of red string, a big sign with strings from George Soros to Champ Biden, like back and forth, lines all over the place, and that is sort of was always taken as this sort of status quo ante. Like, there are these fringe figures with conspiracy theories, but now, like, you have former national security advisors doing events, taking pictures in front of the same kind of thing. Donald Trump is like a red string guy now standing in front of this whole group of people. And Madison Cawthorn saying that, like, they're going to go door to door to take your Bibles and your guns. Like, this vaccination effort, which there is no national door to door campaign, but this is a dry run for some future nefarious act. Like, that is now at the center of the Republican Party. That's it.
But it's also like, everything new is old, right? It reminds you, and Brian Beutler wrote about this in his newsletter last week. It reminds you of the death panels and the fury over Obamacare in 2010, right? Which is the government's going to decide whether you live or die. Now it's the government's going to go door to door and make you take this vaccine that we're not sure we know. Do we really know what's in it? Do we really know if it's safe?
But Donald Trump deserves credit for it.
But Donald Trump deserves credit for it.
Yeah. Well, in the it's classic grievance politics, true, and it's highly racial. And Trump made it more explicit than ever before when he was saying horrible things about Mexicans during his announcement speech. But it's basically like, hey, white Republican base, liberals are going to take things from you and give them to other people. Worry about your status. I mean,
did you see, Tommy, were there any other non-Trump CPAC highlights that stayed with you from the weekend before we get to the man himself?
The vaccination thing that bummed me out. Bummed me out pretty good. I was not thrilled to see the Oath Keepers, the far right militia. There was another sort of far right group there, Nick Fuentes, those groypers, who are the people to the right of the sort of MAGA people who it looked like the cast of Superbad sort of storming CPAC, but I do think that is usually like the fringe of where these CPAC events are, is where we kind of the majority of the Republican Party ends up in a couple of years. So it's it's scary to see these like right-wing militia groups in there. I mean, that stuff is terrifying.
You have anything else on it?
It's so interesting how many conspiracy theories involve like practice runs. Government's always practicing. Like, they're coming for the Bibles, but first they're doing like Jade Helm. Like Jade Helm was a good example. Like, they're like this idea that, like, all right, there was a pandemic, we created a vaccine in record time under a Republican administration to practice for the Bible taking. Like, we finally have our opportunity to do our Bible taking practice.
Well, the government's been trying to take people's guns, right, for like 20, 30 years now. They've really failed at that. Yeah, they're really bad at it.
And we've only succeeded a couple times.
So, of course, the main event was Donald Trump's speech on Sunday afternoon, which touched on all the latest threats and grievances on the right, like critical race theory and cancel culture. He also played some of the old hits, like Windmills Are Evil. We love Windmills Are Evil. That's an old hit. But the heart of what was a long, incoherently rambling speech was Trump's continued attack on the legitimacy of the 2020 election by spreading lies about voter fraud that never happened. Take a listen.
Thank you. It's true. We all won. We all won. We will never give up our search for truth and justice for what happened in the corrupt presidential election of 2020, because without that truth, we cannot have an honest election in 2022 or 2024, no matter what they want to tell you. And our country will soon stand proudly for free and strong and proper elections again. The election fraud of 2020 is the single most requested topic for me and others to talk about.
So there are polls to back up Trump here, but why do you guys think that, as Trump just said, the big lie has become not only Trump's number one issue, but the Republican base's number one issue as well?
Right. The most popular person in the Republican Party has been saying it nonstop since they lost, and core to CPAC, core to Donald Trump as a political figure, core to what animates the people in that room is this idea that there is no information that can run counter to our worldview. That this is easy. That everything should fit with what we're saying. Everything should feel good, and the election results don't feel good. And he's giving us permission to say that's because they're wrong, that's because they're a lie. Climate change doesn't have to be real. Whatever we need to make us feel good in the moment will be true to us. And so, of course, they faced a crushing defeat of their movement. They see Joe Biden as a popular figure in the country now. Their Democrats control the Senate, the House, and the White House. So what is the only explanation that they could possibly have for that defeat? It has to be fraud. And so they've all embraced it. And, you know, I think one of the biggest, I think, pieces of conventional wisdom that I think is wrong is this idea that like misinformation is happening to the people in that room. Like misinformation is hitting those people and then they absorb it and then it becomes something that they believe that they are being kind of, hoodwinked by what Donald Trump and right-wing propaganda is doing. But one thing you see by the way the audience responds throughout this, and to some clips we'll play later, is they are agents of this. They are choosing this. They are part of this game. They know what Donald Trump is doing and they love it.
Tommy, what do you think?
So I thought it was interesting to watch the difference between Donald Trump Sr. and Donald Trump Jr.'s speech. So Donnie Jr., my friend and yours, starts with the Wuhan lab. Then he attacked trans athletes, went to gas prices, Biden dementia, something about Russia, took a little tour to bash Michael Avenatti, which, you know, he got a clap out of me.
What a set list.
Fighting the libs.
Hitting Avenatti while he's very well down, I would say.
I'm just kidding about Avenatti. He's, I don't know, whatever. Then he ripped on Fauci. And then 10 minutes into the speech, someone chants, Trump won. The whole place goes nuts. They stand up, they applaud. It shuts down Donnie Jr. for for a minute while he sort of accepts the applause. And Don Jr. kind of deflected it. He made a joke about how, isn't it interesting that Biden's margin among black voters was higher than Obama's? Isn't that interesting? But then he just went and attacked Hunter Biden for a couple minutes and then went back to his speech, right? It's like, even Donald Trump's son doesn't really want to talk about the election lie stuff that much. He just knows that everyone knows they have to, because Donald Trump Sr. that is the core of his entire speech. All of his grievances have now gotten folded into that rubric, right? Like now he hates the tech companies because they rigged the election against him. It's not just because they censored him or because they're liberals or whatever else. So it's like Lovett was saying, it's like by force of nature, by force of will, the entire base message is becoming about this big lie thing. It's not going anywhere. It's getting bigger.
I also think, this is an extremist movement fueled by grievance, and the ultimate grievance is that the election was taken from them, right? And you understand why it's Trump's number one issue, because it's about Trump and Trump losing, and everything is narcissism and everything's about him, and so that's him. But for the base, it's not just about how they feel about Trump. What he has turned it into, and what the Republican media has turned it into, is it is about something that was taken from you. It is the ultimate thing that was taken from you. And the left is trying to take a lot from you. We were just talking about that. But the ultimate thing is they're now saying that you don't even have a voice, that the people you want to lead you, that you can't have them because the Democrats are going to steal the election away.
You were right all along. Biden did win. You were right all along during the election. Now you're right.
You are the majority.
And it is also, I think, and we're going to talk about this in a second, but I think it's setting up 2024 as a vengeance campaign, right? Like, we are going to avenge the fact that they stole the last one from us, and that's going to be, and because everything is about a culture war and it's not really about policies anymore, the ultimate thing is you took our country from us and now we want it back.
I mean, that's
what this
Kill
is
Bill
about.
too.
To go back to the vaccines, I mean, that is, I think, what Laura Ingraham, Tucker Carlson, that's a lot. So much of what they do now is they take issues and translate them into identity, right? Like that is getting vaccinated or being in favor of mass vaccination is now an identity issue. And once an identity issue, these people are lost to persuasion.
Yep.
Once something becomes identity, you can't persuade them to come back.
And Tucker just looks for all the little areas where he knows the people like us will get mad and call him out and write New York Times stories about him, and he lifts those up and runs with them because that's what he wants.
I also want to play one clip that I thought was one of those rare moments where Trump says something very honest and revealing.
I understand that. I didn't become different. I got impeached twice. I didn't change. I became worse. I became worse.
That's a really good joke. Sorry, everybody. It's just a good joke. It's just funny to tell a joke from the perspective of the Democrats trying to stop him. Like, you didn't make me better, you made me worse. I think that's great.
It's also just such a fuck you to the Susan Collinses of the world, right? Who said, "Oh, after the first impeachment, he's gonna learn his lesson," right? And but I mean, it's a reminder also, I think, of why the only thing that works with Trump is taking away his power. Deterrence doesn't work. Appeasement doesn't work. Ignoring him doesn't work, right? The only thing that works is beating him. That's the only thing he understands.
And it's worth noting too that like that was he was comparing himself to Bill Barr, his attorney general. Bill Barr, who was a supplicant to Donald Trump for virtually all the time he was attorney general, believes in basically unlimited presidential power. Did a ton to what's it called in football when you block for somebody? You run blocking.
Sure, run blocking, pass blocking.
What
else?
Blocking for him.
What kind of play are we running?
Like it's when somebody's in front of somebody with the ball.
So Bill Barr was the fullback in this analogy, and Donald
Trump had
was
the
running
ball.
back,
And
or
what's
was
it
in
called?
An option.
What's it called? Like you're blocking.
He's blocking.
You're blocking.
Yeah, he's just you had it.
You nailed it the first time.
Yeah, the first time.
There's something more. Put it in the comments. There's more specific thing.
Anyway,
the point is.
There's a lesson here.
He is now saying that Bill Barr. Still furious about that Atlantic piece about Bill Barr. Bill Barr and McConnell kind of betrayed him on behalf of the Democrats, not because he was doing what he thought was, a hint of the right thing, but because it was a part of the deeper betrayal by Democrats.
Well, he did the same thing with Brett Kavanaugh, right? When he starts mentioning Brett Kavanaugh, and he said, "Oh, well, because Brett Kavanaugh was almost not confirmed, and because the Democrats went after him, that's why he didn't vote." To believe all my, and of course he just said that's why he voted with the Democrats, right? as if everything is like an election and a competition, when he really meant that like the Supreme Court rejected the absurd fucking claims from Donald Trump and his crack legal team about voter fraud.
He said Bill Barr got intimidated by an impeachment threat out of doing a whole bunch of things, punishing a bunch of enemies, including, I guess, arresting. He said the women who slandered and defamed Brett Kavanaugh. So, like, the people who came forward to accuse Brett Kavanaugh of sexual assault, Trump suggested in this speech should have been punished in some way. It was really a dark, fucked up section.
The whole point he was making is dark, which is Democrats play tough. They don't play nice. And maybe now we need to play. Now we shouldn't play nice either.
Finally, we should get tough. They tried to burn down the fucking Capitol.
Right.
I thought that was tough.
But that's why it's so fucking scary, is he's telling them like, no, they still play dirtier. We got to match them. That was the point of that part of the speech.
And it's just also he went on, obviously he thinks Kavanaugh was mistreated during the hearings, and then he makes the point that the reason that the conservative Supreme Court is actually behaving like a Democratic court is the threat of court packing, because he can't allow even that they have any kind of power. You can't tell this audience like, at least we have the Supreme Court with just ruled to protect voting rights on our behalf. There are no
back to being
victories.
the challenger, and everything's grievance and
no wins.
Yep, that's right. That's exactly right. There was one more clip that's kind of funny where Trump admits something about polling. I want to play that.
They do that straw poll, right? Now, if it's bad, I say it's fake. If it's good, I say that's the most accurate poll perhaps ever taken.
It's
great.
It's so great. Like, the audience is in on the joke, and there's this piece of what it means to be a Trump supporter, which is another way of being a fascist, and it's you have to both buy into it, and you have to be so naive as to buy what Trump is saying, and so cynical to think, actually, I know he's full of shit, but I'm with him, and we're pulling this stunt on everybody else. And that to me is like the most chilling thing overall about CPAC, which is these are all these people, and whatever power we can keep them from attaining, however unsuccessful they were in overturning the previous election, thankfully because a few people managed to stand up against this kind of a mob, like, it is very clear that, like, and this, you always sound so, fascism has a hold on their hearts. Like, this is a fascist group of people who would like to attain power by any means necessary. They do not accept reality. They do not accept truth. They do not accept the limits of democratic power. And the only thing preventing them from turning America into a full authoritarian regime is the last bits of our institutions standing in the way all across the country. And, like, it's this mix of how silly and stupid it is, along with how dangerous it is, and
It's
that
a
was
very American brand of fascism.
Yeah.
Could either of you detect any other messages or themes in Trump's speech that could form the basis for campaign arguments either in the midterms or the next presidential?
I think you can always tell what they want the message to be, which is what's on the teleprompter. And that's defund the police. It's demagoguing immigrants and pretending the border has been just opened completely. It's all the grievance stuff we talked about. Take your guns away, big tech, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I think that's what they want him to say. And then he just goes off script and complains about an aircraft carrier not having steam propulsion anymore.
It was a long story.
Right. I think that's an old bit that he goes back to. And then there's like the election fraud stuff. And like, back to what we were just talking about, I love it. Like Adam Serwer has talked about this and I think put it well, which is like liberals hear Trump talk and we think he's being dishonest. And conservatives hear Trump talk and they think he's being authentic. Because he might not be getting it right, but he's saying what he feels. And it's just pure id and rage and grievance at others. And like that's what has drawn them to him since that very beginning in 2015.
When he went on that diatribe about the steam on the ship, it just made me think about like the horrible, obviously it's all made up or it's mostly made up, but there is some kernel there, which is he went on a tour and started telling these people about how their ship should work.
How to run an aircraft carrier.
And they were just indulging him for like that 20-minute meeting before the pictures were taken. And now he's turned it into this very intense story about how he tried to put steam power back on an aircraft carrier.
Something about magnets.
Yeah, it didn't. But look, you're right, Tommy, that what they put on the prompter and what's written in the speech is certainly what his advisors think the message should be. It's sort of what Republican politicians, probably what Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell hope the message should be. It started immigration and the border was the first topic. That moved into crime now is their new big issue. He also said, how nothing ever happens to Antifa and BLM, Black Lives Matter. It only happens to innocent Republicans like Trump and Rudy Giuliani. So
like
now,
Ashley Babbitt, the woman who was shot on January 6th.
So the new theme
very
is
dark.
The government uses its power to punish Republicans, but not go after any of the people who are committing homicides at a record rate, right? This is another theme. Then they get into guns. First Amendment and cancel culture is a big one. And then it builds up to the big lie, which you're right. I think some Republicans would rather him not talk about, but to Trump, that's the center of it all, right? And he says, like, this is even more important than the border, than anything else, because that is the big grievance.
Yeah, I do think it's on the one hand, sure, there's some ways in which Trump going on about the big lie is not helpful, but it's also opened the door to all these voter restrictions that they're passing all across the country. So they don't need to address it. They don't need to embrace it. They just need to have him out there fanning the flames of this conspiracy so that they can pass the voter suppression law. Yeah, the two things he said. So he did talk about crime. The other quote I think we'll hear again and again is that Joe Biden is turning America into a sanctuary city. And I think that
America's one big sanctuary city.
He'll come back. That is going to be the core of this. He even started previewing. He's like, you haven't been seeing the caravans, but they're coming back.
Yeah, great.
So it just means what he's programming. He's programming 2022.
And I think previewing that his attack on Joe Biden will also be that he is corrupt, that his family's corrupt. He mentioned Hunter. He mentioned the paintings, right?
There was this weird line about how Joe Biden's got a lot of toothbrushes, and he's like, "Hey, Louis Gohmert, I bet you got one toothbrush." And everyone's like, "What the fuck is this guy talking about?"
He was so patronizing Louis Gohmert because here's Donald Trump, multiple houses, super rich guy. He's like, Louis Gohmert, he's got one house, one toothbrush, one room, one bed.
Yeah, the other thing you could tell was sort of a planned messaging strategy was they're peddling this website, takeonbigtech.com, where he suggests that you can join the Trump class action lawsuit against the tech companies. Really just takes you a donation page, tries to harvest your email and your information for his continued grifting, PAC, whatever, new political infrastructure he has.
Mark Zuckerbucks, he called him.
Mark Zuckerbucks.
Yeah.
Now,
I meant to say,
is that new?
That was new to me because I'll tell you, my fucking anti-Semitism alarm went off full fucking blare in my house. It went off. And it's hard to,
That was loud.
There's no app for that thing. I had to go turn it. It was hard to turn it off.
Given that the crowd chanted 4 more years multiple times during Trump's speech, it shouldn't have been all that surprising that the former president won the unscientific straw poll of CPAC attendees with 70%. Second place was Ron DeSantis with 21%. Mike Pompeo, Tommy's candidate of choice, at 5%. Don Jr. at 4%. Everyone else at 1%. Trump's approval rating among CPAC attendees was 98%, all of which could only reinforce world-renowned narcissist Donald Trump's belief that his people want him to run again, a decision he took a few inches closer to during an interview with Maria Bartiromo before his speech on Sunday. Here's a clip.
You ready to get back in that ring and run for president again, sir?
Well, I do know my answer, but I can't reveal it yet, and because that has to do with campaign financing and everything else. You know that. So I can't reveal it yet, but I absolutely know my answer. And we're going to do very well, and people are going to be very happy.
What do you guys make of those comments? Is it time to start taking Trump seriously as the likely Republican nominee in 2024?
I'll say, first, one other piece of Donald Trump's future that was in his message was that he started saying some incoherent things about prosecutors in New York. Because I think a little bit of him is still he's previewing his message if he is eventually charged with something.
Right.
So that was part of it too.
He said they photocopied the documents and just handed them to the New York prosecutors.
But the what I took away from the straw polls is like these fucking people, the Gnomes and Pompeos, have been groveling and crawling over broken glass to beg these people to become a constituency. Like, I know you like Trump, but I'm here too, and I'm really trying to be something that you want me to be. I'll say anything you need. I'll do one interview with NPR in a year and then kick them out. Like, whatever you need me to do to be your guy, I'll be your guy. And they don't give a fuck about anybody except Trump and Ron DeSantis. That's it.
70% is not that good. That kind of surprises me for the most MAGA base.
Yeah. Although I think I'm
not saying he's going to lose. It's just like that's a pretty decent fallout.
Yeah. Although the 98% approval rating.
Yeah, they all like him. But if they don't want him to run again, that's notable. Also, Maria Bartiromo, she's lost the thread so long ago. She referred to Ashley Babbitt, again, the woman who climbed through a window and was shot at the Capitol on January 6th, as a wonderful woman who went to a peaceful protest. Trump then asserts that the head of security for a Democrat shot her, and he called for his people, I believe he said, to be released, the people in custody. It was again a very fascist, dark exchange.
The insurrection was good. It is the new branding from Donald Trump. It wasn't a big deal. That was the first thing. Oh, it wasn't that big of a deal. Now it was good. And it should be.
We all, I think, expected the revisionist history and on the election lies and the fraud and all these audits going on are helping that case. But to watch the images of what we saw on January 6th and then come away saying wonderful people at a peaceful protest just shows that facts don't matter. It's all just what team you're on.
But I think these other Republican candidates, or potential candidates, I don't see the path. I don't even see the path for Ron DeSantis. I think you get 70% in a poll like that. That is fucking crushing among a big field like that. I think he clearly loves the adulation. Everything he said in that speech, every utterance sounded like a man who just cannot stop himself from running again. He fucking loves it. He needs it. It's going to happen. And then I don't see how he gets beaten. Even if he's indicted, like you said, Lovett, he's got a story for being indicted and charged. Everyone's like, oh, well, then his businesses, he might be broke because of his business. But he doesn't care if he's fucking broke. He'll run broke too. It doesn't matter.
Politics makes some money.
Donald Trump has been Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems for fucking years now. He is snorting Adderall and keeping his debtors at bay and breaking the law and barely escaping, but he has escaped every single time. Why on earth wouldn't he run again? It's the best thing he could possibly do, even if he is indicted. And regardless, first of all, I'm interested to see just Ron DeSantis having these kind of, poking his head up, out of the trench, getting a little bit higher in these polls, plus sitting around a table with Joe Biden and not trying to personally throttle him, has created a moment. I am interested to see what Donald Trump does, because if Donald Trump does not care if Ron DeSantis lives or fucking dies, and if he's worried about someone else going to challenge him, he's got to try to figure out a way to make Ron DeSantis' life pretty miserable. But regardless, okay, let's say Trump in some fluke doesn't run for whatever reason. What did we just watch? We watched CPAC and this whole propaganda machine, which is a machine for turning politicians into little Trumps. Donald Trump will be the nominee, whether it's his name or not. That is done. There's no ideological debate in the Republican Party. There is no conservative rearguard action against what these people have built. This is it. It is his party. It is his world.
I would still argue that he's still more dangerous than all of them.
He's proven to be a pretty good demagogue.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
We did see that.
I don't disagree with that.
What would taking him seriously as a nominee look like? Do you think the idea that he is getting closer to running should affect the White House's strategy, the Democratic strategy, our midterm strategy? Do we elevate him? Do we not talk about him? What do you guys think about that?
I don't know quite yet. I think the Biden folks will continue to just try to run on accomplishments and try to get this bipartisan deal done. And it was interesting. One of the only sort of strategic things he did in the speech was Trump came out hard against the bipartisan infrastructure deal. It was one of the few sort of political positions he took that seemed designed to harm Biden. The other thing he did that I took notice of was he criticized Biden for getting out of Afghanistan but leaving equipment there, but then was like, but no, it's time, we should be out of there, right? He like kind of took away from the Republican Party any criticism of the withdrawal, although I guess they'll just reframe it.
Yeah, I mean, it was right. He was saying it's similar. It's like similar to the vaccine. Like, I deserve credit for the vaccine, but don't get it. It's like I believe we should. I deserve credit for ending the wars, but the way they're doing it is terrible. In some sort of amorphous sort of improv kind of way.
The Biden White House strategy, and this is their political strategy all along, has been to sort of, prove people. Sorry, it has been to rebuild trust in government by proving that government can deliver and change your lives for the better. I think that is essential. I think they have to do that for sure. I don't think it's sufficient though, and that's where I think that the Trump thing comes in. Like, I think the Democrats have to have answers for the critical race theory fear-mongering, the cancel culture fear-mongering, the immigration stuff, the crime stuff, all the shit that Trump said that doesn't just put Democrats on the defensive, that's not just a response, but puts Republicans on the defensive on some of these issues as well and starts telling a story about it, because I don't think we will be able to just ignore all that and say, okay, they're going to do culture war stuff. People don't care about that. People care about checks and pockets and shots and arms. That's all people care about, because in an age where we have a very powerful propaganda machine on the right and a very powerful propaganda machine through social media, like, I don't think that we can just put our head in the sand and think, okay, we're going to focus on improving people's lives and that's enough, because I don't think it's enough.
Yeah, it's and I do think one lesson, like, you're right, Donald Trump Jr. didn't need to say the lie, because the lie is already fully embraced by the people
and he said it
room.
before.
Of course, but Republicans saw something that no one had ever heard of, critical race theory. And they didn't say, that's not what they're interested in hearing about. I'm going to talk about healthcare. That's not what they want. I'm going to talk about pocketbook issues. They said, let's make something from nothing. Let's say something so often and so conspiratorially that it becomes an issue. And then the work is done for us. Now we have a new thing we can talk about, and everybody understands what we mean. And I think Democrats, I think George W. Bush. This is all old stuff. George W. Bush got a lot of heat because someone in administration said, like, we're in the reality creating business. We're in the reality distorting business. And it was obviously correctly, I think, they were criticized for having said that. But there was some kernel of truth in there, which is when you are at the have a platform at the national level, you can distort what people think. You can change what people think, and you can create issues from nothing. And Democrats don't do that. We do not take things that are at 3% and 4% and said, let's make 70% of the country care about that.
Or the other thing we do is, they peddle all these lies about critical race theory, and our reaction is, well, these are all lies, and here's the truth about what's going on in schools. But Andrew Lawrence, who works for Media Matters, said, one thing Democrats could say is Republicans want to put cameras in the classrooms to watch your children all day, right? Because some of them have said that they want to do that to make sure that teachers aren't teaching critical race theory. And, like, put them on I think this is not a bad idea. Like, put them on the fucking defensive and talk about all the crazy shit that they want to do, as opposed to just being like, they're lying, here's the truth.
Yeah, I mean, you're sort of seeing, Jen Psaki trying to do a bit of this messaging to say that actually, if you voted against the COVID relief bill, you voted to defund the police because there was a bunch of funding for police and that. And it's like, I don't know if that'll be effective, but it's interesting that it really pissed off a bunch of the speakers at CPAC, and it led them to repeat our charge for once and not us repeat theirs. But the debate on Twitter today was whether Biden's speeches are boring and whether that matters. It's like, what swing voter is watching an entire presidential speech? Zero.
There was a bunch of fucking anti-vax nonsense at CPAC. Every Republican, from Mitch McConnell to Kevin McCarthy to all of them, should be asked today, why don't you fucking speak out against the anti-vax conspiracy bullshit in your own, divide their party on this, right? Put them on the defensive over this.
I don't, it's something, it is, I think it's both it's a constitutional issue. Like, Democrats just aren't built to do these kinds of relentless campaigns, to keep at it week after week after week. And it's a systemic problem because we don't have a Fox News that will drive this message for the Democratic Party, even when their politicians aren't talking about it. They don't. There's no one to carry that baton.
Yeah, the truth is that Fox News creates the message. And
Yes.
they carry it, right? I mean, the critical race theory guy, I think, emerged on Tucker Carlson or on Fox somewhere and then was brought to the White House to consult.
There's this symbiotic relationship between Trump and the right-wing media, which is he both reflects and shapes the message on Fox, right? So like his speeches are interesting to listen to in that, and that this is what's happening on Fox and this is what's gonna happen on Fox.
I mean, you look at a kernel, right? Donald Trump calling Mark Zuckerberg Zuckerbucks. Imagine if a Democrat had done that. You'd have a week of stories about it. It would become an issue. It would grab hold, and we just don't have that infrastructure. I mean, imagine if it is so inconceivable that 4 days from now, Kevin McCarthy is being asked, like, do you believe there's an anti-Semitism problem within the Republican Party after Donald Trump said Zuckerbucks, and here are these 5 other examples. Inconceivable. Will not happen. Not the way our politics works.
Good to be with you guys again right here in the studio.
Lovely.
Look at us.
Lovely to be here.
And
Look at
we'll
us synced up.
Look at us all synced up. We'll talk to you again on Thursday. Bye. If you haven't already, don't miss out on our new podcast, Edith, a scripted comedy starring Rosamund Pike about America's secret first female president. We're about halfway through the series, but it's not too late for you to catch up. New episodes of Edith are released every Thursday, and the first 4 are out now. Check it out. I've loved Edith. I've loved every episode. So good.
It's very, very funny. And
It's a hit.
Love it. Travis was tweeting photos of himself posing like Glenn Beck over the weekend, who also was holding up a book, the biography of Edith Wilson, I think, at CPAC for some reason.
Yeah, because they're doing a whole Jill Biden is like Edith Wilson thing now. There's that's brewing on the right.
Okay.
Because
Jill Biden's pulling all the strings. She's got the marionette now.
Right.
So it's the worst reason they could be holding.
Oh yeah, the worst reason
Also,
possible.
Joe Biden, the nicest human being on the planet.
Yeah.
I think they do it in shifts. I think Jill Biden has the night shift. Kamala has the day shift for operating Joe Biden like Weekend at Bernie's.
That clip will be used on Ben Shapiro's show.
Great. Hi, everybody.